All right, welcome. Today, we're diving deep into a really cryptic passage from an ancient letter. This thing is a prophetic puzzle that has had people scratching their heads for centuries.
Think about it. What if a 2,000-year-old letter, something written to this small, struggling community, actually holds a secret timetable for the end of the world? That's what we're going to do today. We're going to piece this whole ancient mystery together.
And this right here is our central clue. You see these phrases? The rebellion, the man of lawlessness. What on earth do those mean? These are the exact terms we're going to try and decipher. We need to figure out what they meant to the original audience, the people who first heard them. Okay, so to really get this, we've got to travel back in time. Picture this, the Roman city of Thessalonica. There's this young, really energetic church, but they're being persecuted, and honestly, they're terrified. Rumors are just flying around that the final judgment, what they called the Day of the Lord, had already started, and they'd completely missed it. Can you imagine? So the Apostle Paul, he hears about this and writes them a letter. He's trying to calm them down, to stabilize their hope. He's basically saying, hey, hold on, don't panic. There are two massive things that absolutely must happen first. But here's the problem for us, right? He gives them a sequence, but the words he uses, they're just super confusing without that original context. All right, so let's really get into it. To understand what they thought about the end, we have to go all the way back to the beginning. You see, the people reading this letter for the first time, their whole worldview was shaped by this massive story of cosmic conflict, a battle that started ages and ages before they were ever around. And that story has some really key moments. It all kicks off with the serpent's deception back in Eden. Then it escalates in a big way with this story of rebellious heavenly beings, they called them the Watchers, who corrupt humanity. And then bam, at the Tower of Babel, the nations of the world are scattered and put under the influence of these hostile spiritual powers. So for them, the end of the world, it wasn't some random thing. No, it was the final epic climax of this supernatural war that had been raging for all of history. So you can see, right, in their minds, all of human history was a spiritual battlefield. And because of that, they weren't just expecting some random dictator to show up at the end. They were expecting a human king, for sure, but one who is totally empowered by that ancient, evil spiritual force. The ultimate embodiment of that original rebellion against God. Okay, so now that we have that whole cosmic backstory in our heads, we can finally go back to those really weird terms in Paul's letter. It's time to unmask the key players in this whole end times drama. So first up, the rebellion. The Greek word is apostasia. And let's be super clear, this is not a political uprising. The source material makes it plain that this is a massive spiritual and theological rejection of God's truth. We're talking about a worldwide falling away from faith, a huge defection that creates the perfect fertile ground for a great deceiver to rise up. And from that rebellious soil, well, it grows its most poisonous fruit, the man of lawlessness. He's described as a future human ruler, but one who's completely animated by Satan himself. He's the final human embodiment of that entire cosmic rebellion we talked about. And his ultimate act of defiance? He's going to walk into a temple and declare that he is God. Now this brings us to what is probably the most debated piece of this entire puzzle. See, Paul says that something, or maybe someone, is actively holding all of this back. He calls it the restrainer. But what is it? Seriously, what on earth could it be? People have guessed everything from the Roman Empire to a powerful angel. Well, the interpretation here argues the answer is actually two parts, and the clue is in how Paul words it. First, he talks about what restrains, using a neutral term. This seems to point to God's big picture, sovereign plan, his mission to gather people from every nation into his family. But then he switches to he who restrains, a masculine term, and that points directly to God himself, the one who is personally and actively enforcing that plan. So now we've identified the key players, right? The rebellion, the man of lawlessness, and the restrainer. Let's put it all together and see what kind of clear step-by-step timeline this creates for the final days. Okay, here's the sequence, step by step. Number 1, God's global mission to reach all the nations is happening right now, and that mission is acting like the brakes on this whole final crisis. Step 2, once that mission is complete, the brakes come off, and that's when the Great Rebellion, the apostasia, happens. This then allows the man of lawlessness to finally be revealed, and his terrifying reign is only stopped by the visible, powerful return of Jesus Christ. And this is so crucial. You see how this ties everything to the completion of that global mission? It's a point Jesus himself actually made. This sequence is also why you can rule out historical figures like, say, the Roman Emperor Nero being the man of lawlessness. Why? Because the prophecy is crystal clear that this guy's defeat is tied directly to the future, visible return of Christ. And, well, that hasn't happened yet. So we've kind of decoded the puzzle, we've laid out the timeline, but what's the point? What does all this mean for us today? Let's get to the so what. Why should this ancient text matter to anyone now? Well, there are some huge implications here. First, it frames all of history as a spiritually contested arena, not just a series of random events. Second, it puts God's mission to the nations right at the center of his end times clock. Third, and this is a big one, it says the greatest final danger isn't going to be oppression, but deception. But there's also incredible hope in this. It means that evil is restrained, it's on a leash, and it simply cannot emerge before God's timing is perfect. And this really drives home the idea that believers have an active role to play in all this. In a world that's being tempted toward this great falling away, a faithful church, people holding on to the truth, becomes a living, breathing sign that the Restrainer is still at work. They are a witness to God's plan right in the middle of a world that Paul says is already soaked in the mystery of lawlessness. And all of this leaves us with one final, pretty heavy question to think about. If the ultimate tool of this final cosmic rebellion is deception, if its entire foundation is built on lies, then what does that say about the incredible power and the absolute non-negotiable value of truth?